So today I'm going to look at a program by the name of Broot, which is a fuzzy finder file tree file manager thingy. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it's a really cool program and I didn't think I would like it as much as I do. So if you're new to the channel, you know what to do, and let's jump right into it. So before I actually get to showing you what the program actually does, let's just have a look at the installation process. So that's just on the GitHub page right here. So basically, if you're on Arch, I believe there is an AUR package, but for everything else, yeah, there is an AUR package. That's how I would have installed it. Everything else, there's methods on here, and also there's a Windows installation. So hey, if you want to use that, then that's also an option for you. I don't know if... Okay, there is a macOS port. So there you go. There's a macOS version as well. So come have a look at this documentation, and then you can get that installed yourself. Now, one thing that you might find weird is that when you first try to run it, it's going to say, I want to add a shell function to your aliases file. Just go ahead and do that. Basically what that's doing is making it so it'll create an alias that will let you actually CD into a directory, because otherwise it wouldn't actually be able to get the path out of the program and then CD out. It's a little bit of a mess to do CDs from within a script. Just basically let it do its thing, and then you'll be able to actually use it as you would expect. So let's just have a look at what this program does, and then we can get into some of the options that it has and just some of the cool stuff that you can do with it. So let's zoom in a bit and let's run Broot. I'll run it with the shell function just so we can actually see the CD function. So I run that, and this is what you get. So you might notice how you have all of these unlisted files, and there's a bunch of stuff missing from here. Like, I don't have any of my hidden files in here. So that's part of the reason why it is so quick. So it doesn't actually list out every single file at the start. And it doesn't list out hidden files by default either. Now, the reason it avoids hidden files is to avoid the problem that Fuzzy Finder has. So Fuzzy Finder will search through every single file, and the problem that happens then is when you run into a Git directory. The problem with a Git directory is there's these thousands of tiny little files, and they just slow everything down to a crawl. So this by default will ignore hidden files and will also not dive as deep as it can into directories. So if we say wanted to go into like my repos folder, we can search for that, and then I press Alt Enter, and that'll actually CD into that. So that's cool. But what if we don't want to just CD into it? What if we want to just CD within the program and then keep going from there? So let's just run that again. Actually, I'll bring up Screen Key just so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So Screen Key, cool. Okay, so as I said, we type in my repos folder. We can jump into that by pressing Enter. I've also modified the key bindings a bit so I can use Vim keys a bit more. So you may have noticed that I was scrolling up and down. That was actually with my trackpad, but you could also use Control K to go up, Control J. For the Control H and Control L bindings, if I was to say go down to, I don't know, just a random folder in here, one of the folders that's at the base level. So if we press Control H, that'll actually take me right back to the top. But if I was to say be on this share folder right here, if I press Control H, that'll actually jump me into it. I didn't realize it was going to jump me in. That I might need to look into. But the other way to jump into a folder is just pressing Control L. So if I press Control L now, that'll actually jump me into that folder. I'm not sure why it jumps weirdly when you're not at the base level. I guess that might be just some weird behavior of the program. Now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of got off track while I was talking about the basic behavior. It's all well and good to be able to scroll up and down, but that's no quicker than just using your terminal file manager. What you actually want to do is to write out folder names. So let's say we wanted to go to my repos folder. We can write that out, and as we can see, that's now right down the bottom here. So if I press Enter, that'll jump me into that. So that's now changed my path up here. And now I could go into, say, ST and jump into that, and I could maybe open one of the files in here, or instead I could press Alt Enter, sorry, and then actually jump into that. And that'll actually bring me into that within my actual terminal. So that's actually really cool. You don't have to do that, obviously. You can do a lot of the stuff within Broot. It actually does have the ability to do things like moving files. I'll see if I can find it. Okay, yeah, you have built-in functionality for move, copy, remove, and make directory. Now, I'm not a big fan of doing this. It feels significantly slower than just using my terminal file manager, because all you're doing is actually running those programs. So you actually have to write things out in the same way you'd use for those. You can't like select a bunch of files and then move them to one place. So compared to a traditional terminal file manager, it's really slow in that regard, but If you're just using it as a fuzzy finder and all of its other really cool stuff, I think it's really cool. Now, there's something else really cool that it can do. So if we go back into this directory we have here, so this is a Git directory here. Now, if I was to press Control S, this isn't the default binding for this, but basically what this will do is actually open up like a Git status thing so you can see how much has changed between your two different versions. This isn't a great example. Let's go down to my website, which I don't think I've committed stuff for a while. Yeah, so we can see I've removed 148 lines, I've added 91 lines, and it shows all of the files that I've actually added. And also, as you can see, it's not listing out my .git directory, which is really nice because, as I said, there is a lot of junk in there and you really don't want to be listing that out. But what if you do want to be doing that? So let's actually just quit out of this. I think we can quit with the Vim style quit. Yes, we can. So you can actually do :Q to quit it if you really love Vim and you can't really avoid it. So what we're going to do now is have a look at some of the options. So if we look into the help page, not the Git page, what were they saying there? Basically, here are the options here. We can enable dates, we can disable dates. Everything in here, there's an enable and a disable. I'm not really sure why, because not enabling it, I assume, would be the same as disabling it. I don't know why they're both there. I don't know. Maybe someone knows why that's there. Anyway, we can enable dates. We can enable only show folders. We can also show git info. So that's what I was doing before. That was basically just running this command right here, but within the program. I'll show you the config file in a little bit, and then we can look into that. We can also show hidden files. We can show git ignored files. We can show permissions, sizes. I'm not sure what trim root is. I haven't been able to work that one out, but size is a really cool one. It will really, really slow it down, but it'll give you a completely different look at how this program actually works. Let's just try out a couple of these. So if we were to try, for example, Broot with -d, as we can see, that will show the last modified time of every single file. So this might be nice if you, I don't know, maybe okay, here's an example. If we go into my uploads, if it's gonna bring it up, uploads, not uploaded, to upload, I don't remember what I called that folder, to upload, there we go. So now I can see the last modified time of every single folder in here, which will give me a hint about when I should actually be uploading these files. So as you can see, there's like a Compton blur in here, Dunst rice. I think most of these are probably gonna be up by the time this video is up, so there's nothing hinting at in here that you probably haven't seen already. And I've got some other stuff in here as well, but that's not too important. Basically, this will just let you see the dates. So let's just have a look at some of the other options, and let's actually combine that with something. So if we were to combine that with the permissions one, let's run that and just see what that looks like. Now, this might seem very familiar to you, and there's a reason that'll seem familiar to you, because this is basically what LS looks like. So if you want like a fuzzy finder LS, for whatever reason, then I guess this is probably a really good option. I think this is really confusing to look at, so I'm not going to use it as like a normal file manager, but if you need to see permissions and you need to see dates for stuff, and you also need fuzzy finding at the same time, and you need really, really quick fuzzy finding, this might be a pretty good alternative to Fuzzy Finder. You can probably show permissions and dates in Fuzzy Finder, but this is way quicker just because the optimizations it's made with hiding certain types of files. Now, as I was saying before, you actually can show hidden files and all those if you really want to. We'll see what actually happens when we do that, though. So if I run Broot-H, you'll notice that it works fairly quickly. Depending on where you are, it'll work quickly. Now, if we go into, say, repos and go into ST, you can notice it's lagging a little bit because it's now dealing with the Git directory and a couple other things in here. It's not as slow as it could be, but it's definitely slower, that's for sure. Now, what will happen if we make it even slower? So instead of just showing hidden files, let's also show git ignored files. So if I run that with H and I, we'll notice it's fine in the home directory, but we start running some stuff, it feels a little slower now. It's actually running fairly quick today. Last time I tried to run this, it was pretty much unusable, but I guess it's very much going to depend on which folders you go into, and things like that, basically. So if you want to always show hidden files and always show git ignored files, it will probably be fine, especially if you are on a quicker system. But especially if you're on something a bit older, like I know a lot of people run older ThinkPads, it might be a little slow to try to show hidden files and also to try to show git ignored files. Now, as I said, very much will depend on your computer. This next option you probably don't want to run all the time, but it is cool when you do need to actually see it. So if we run Broot with the -S option, this will actually list out the sizes of all of our folders. So if we look in here, it's loading up really quickly because I just loaded up before, so it'll all be in memory still. Normally it'll be significantly slower for you because it has to actually go and compute all of these sizes. Now, yes, I know I have 97 gigs in my videos folder. That's, I think, pretty much all anime. Yeah, so anyway, that doesn't matter. You wouldn't want to run this by default normally, but it might be nice if you want to see the size of all your directories, and I guess, yeah, basically that. I also noticed that I don't think this is shown by default. Now, when you do sizes, it'll actually show the sizes of even the hidden files, which is nice. I don't know why it's not just ignoring the hidden files, because I don't have it set to show them. I guess sizes show them by default. I guess that's probably why the no hidden files option is there, because sizes actually shows it by default. I don't know why it doesn't just follow the behavior of the rest of the application. That's really weird that it doesn't do that. But I went off track for a second. What I wanted to mention was the fact that the symlinks actually show you to where they're pointing to in this mode, which is nice. So if you want to see, I guess, just where they're pointing to, basically, without having to actually query the symlinks. Now, one thing I did want to mention is there is a no styles option, but I don't think it works. So I just tried it before. If we go Broot -- no style, it looks like my style's still here. Now, I don't know why that doesn't work. Maybe no style actually means just use the default style. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I would have assumed that it would just strip all the color out, but I guess not. Maybe it'll strip the color out if I was to pipe it in or send it to a file or redirect it to a file. Test.txt? I don't know. Maybe not. It made the file, it just didn't put anything in there. So I guess the no style option just doesn't work then. That's interesting. I might have to file an issue about that. There's no point showing the show git info option because I basically showed that before. That was what I had bound to Control S. Now I'll just show you what the actual config folder looks like, or the config file, I guess. So if we go into my config folder, down to where Broot is, now this folder is made by default, and it'll load up a config file in here, and also it'll put this script in here. Now, this script is that script that I was running before, that BR that I was running to actually CD into places. So if we go into like cell and I go Alt-Enter, that's what actually lets me do that BR function right here. So if you want to examine this and maybe use this for some other programs, then go ahead and actually do that. But what I wanted to have a look in here for was the actual config file. Okay, so the first option in here is default flags. So this is actually a really interesting way to handle default options. Basically, instead of having some weird convoluted way of handling it, all this is going to do is if you put some default flags in here, so say like DP, and I open up a new terminal and I run Broot, then it will just run that with those default options. And that's actually really, really cool. A lot of programs will try to come up with some convoluted way to configure it for default options. This is just using the flags. I like that. I think more programs should probably do it that way. And let's see, I'll just kill the screen key because that's really getting annoying now. As for the rest of this file, so the rest of this is really about just configuring keys. So you've got your edit key, your quit key, all of this stuff in here. Now the one that I mentioned about Vim keys, this is how I'm handling it. So Control H will run the parent option, then focus will run the focus option. I'm probably going to do a more in-depth video about doing the configuration, but if you just want to copy my configs from this, then go right ahead. I'm not going to really spend much time actually going over how the configs work in this video, because I feel like really you can dedicate an entire video to it. I could probably talk for 15-20 minutes about just configuring this program, so I might end up actually doing that. We also have some other default stuff in here, and then how to skin the program. Now, skinning the program is actually very, very simple. So you'll set a foreground color, then a background color, and then some attributes. And the actual colors can be in a bunch of different formats. So you can actually do RGB colors. You can set different levels of gray. You can set ANSI colors. You can set color names. All of this is actually mentioned in the actual Broot documentation. It is a fairly well documented program, so I recommend actually coming and having a look at this. And then as for the attributes, you've got things like bold, italic, crossed out, underlined, and overlined. So if you want to play around with this theme and make it look exactly the way you want it to look, that would be really cool. If someone happens to make a VS Code theme for it, send it my way and I will happily run that, and I'll probably do a video on it just because that's awesome. So I think that's pretty much everything I want to talk about this. As I said, I'm not going to go in depth into configuring in this video just because there's too much to cover. So even if we just look at some of these commands, there's a bunch of different options in here. It's fairly simple to configure if you have a look at the documentation yourself, but I do want to do a dedicated video on it. So unlike a lot of the programs I talk about on this channel, I'm actually running Broot on a daily basis. I'm just not running it by itself. What I'm actually doing is using it within LF as a fuzzy finder. So if I bring up LF now, and basically, if I press the F key, that'll bring up Broot. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because there's a couple of places on my file system that don't have alias. A lot of the places I generally want to go to, I do have aliased, but there's going to be some places that I've missed out on, or some places I don't really care about. But as an example, let's just go to some place I do have alias. So if I want to go, for example, into my ST folder, I can just write in repos and ST, and then if I press Alt-Enter, that'll actually jump me to where I want to go within LF. So I've actually made it so I can jump around my file system with my fuzzy finder, which is really, really useful. There is one other benefit of using something like Broot in LF over something like FZF. If I bring up Broot again, if I press Ctrl S, I can actually see my Git status. Now, I don't typically use this. Typically, if I want to see my Git status, I'll either run Git status, or I can look at it within my node tree within Vim. But this is just a nice addition that's there in case I ever want to actually use it. Now, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about now. I can't think of anything else that I wanted to go over. Yeah, I reckon that's it. So if you like this video, remember to smash that like button and leave me a comment down below letting me know what you think. If you want to see more videos like this, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. I'm now aiming for 10,000 subs and any help would be really appreciated. Up on that corner, I've got the playlist this video's in, so go check that out if you want to see other videos like this. Down below, I've got all of my social links, so if you want to see my Discord, my Telegram, or any of that stuff, go check those out. I've also got all of my support links down below, so if you want to support the channel, then there's a Patreon and a couple other methods down below, so feel free to use any of those, but as always, if you don't feel like using any, then you obviously don't have to. And lastly, I've got my alternate video platform, so I've got my library and I've got my BitTube. So if you want to watch my videos on a platform that isn't YouTube, that's where you'd go for that. So I think that's pretty much everything for me now, and I'm out.